Rawteur. So let's talk about Stargate SG-1 and why, despite running for a solid 10 seasons, it was canceled just before hitting season 11. Now, this is a show that had built a massive fan base and had seen spin-offs like Stargate Atlantis. But why, after all that success, did it come to an end? According to a couple sources, including Screen Rant and Slash Film, Stargate was kind of ahead of its time. It was one of the first transmedia franchises, starting with the 1994 Stargate movie by Roland Emmerich, before expanding into TV in 1997. So over the years, it grew fast, and by the time SG-1 was canceled, the franchise had already birthed 2 spin-offs. But here's the thing, TV trends were shifting, serialized storytelling was on the rise, and shows with more episodic formats like SG-1 were starting to feel outdated, which is a shame because I actually prefer episodics, especially when they have an A and B storyline. So the episodic formula would be something like a Scully and Mulder, X-Files, where every episode there's a new case, there's something they're trying to solve. So that would be, let's say, the A storyline, but then the B storyline would be their interpersonal relationship, the ones between Scully and Mulder, but then also with, maybe the cops or their family members, that sort of stuff. So I really like that personally. Even outside of sci-fi, when you look at a show like Scandal, I really like Scandal at the beginning when it felt episodic, then all of a sudden it was about her and the president. And anyway, you get the point. So it's a shame that there was that sense that this style was kind of outdated. I'm starting to see it come back more, with Dead Boy Detectives. That was kind of like that, and I really like that. Unfortunately, Netflix canceled it. Anyway, so back to Stargate. After season 8, Richard Dean Anderson, who played Jack O'Neill, left the show to spend more time with his family, and the show tried to reset with new characters like Ben Browder's Cameron Mitchell and Claudia Black's Vala Maldoran. Now, despite these changes, viewership just wasn't what it used to be, which makes sense because if you've watched a show and a series for years, season 8, that could have been a decade already because there might not have been one season every year. You could have been watching Stargate for a decade already, and then here come these new people and you're just expected to accept them into the fold and be part of the Stargate family, while it's understanding that these are actors, these are professionals, and they just want to do a good job. As viewers, you kind of establish this parasocial relationship with these characters. You don't know them really, but it is what it is. You care about them, you care about their stories. So when you get new people in, it's almost as if you're starting from season 1 all over again, right? Add that to the rising production costs, which is always a problem for sci-fis because you have all these graphics, you have a ton of makeup with the aliens, it's the bane of science fiction, which is why story is so important, and why it's so important that when these companies do decide to do a sci-fi series, they really have a labor of love for it, and they really lean into the story and really create something that the fans, if it is canon based, if it's based on something else, that the fans are going to gravitate to, because then it's going to get canceled, right? Because you're spending a lot of money, and it just doesn't make sense to spend money on something that people aren't going to watch. For example, The Acolyte. Granted, I'm not going to get into it again, but you get my point. Like, it just doesn't make sense to spend the kind of money it'll cost to make these type of series and not create it in a way that the fans who you are actually catering to, whether or not you say you're catering to them or not. You're catering to the fans of that medium or that piece of media. You have to create something that they're going to watch, or your show's just going to get canceled, point blank, period. There's Lord of the Flies coming out soon. If it's nothing like Lord of the Flies that we remembered growing up reading that book in junior high school, you're gonna fade off. You're gonna be like, well, this actually didn't happen. Well, what? I mean, take Yellow Jackets. To me, Yellow Jackets is a spin-off of Lord of the Flies, and it was great until they added some magic and teddy bears caught on fire, and then they tried to write that in. Oh, well, no, it was actually electrical, but that still doesn't make sense to me. So you get my point. As Screen Rant and Slash Film mentioned, by August 2007, the Sci-Fi Channel had officially pulled the plug on SG-1. Now, it wasn't all doom and gloom. The cast and crew learned about the cancellation midway through season 10, so they got a chance to wrap things up in the final episodes. But they didn't just stop there. Fans got 2 direct-to-DVD movies, The Arc of Truth and Continuum, which helped tie up even more loose ends. Interestingly, SG-1 almost had a second life. Screen Rant noted that there were talks with Apple to release a season 11 on iTunes. Unfortunately, contractual clauses with Sci-Fi shut that down right away. Sci-Fi wasn't happy. But here's the thing, Stargate's fan base is still alive and kicking, especially on platforms like Reddit. Fans frequently shared their love for the series and spin-offs like Atlantis. One user on Reddit mentioned how they intertwined both SG-1 and Atlantis in chronological order during their yearly rewatch. Another one pointed out that Amazon now owns the rights to the Stargate franchise. So, never say never, and there's always hope for a revival, especially given Amazon's interest in reviving old IPs like James Bond. Now, of course, there are ongoing debates among fans about whether a potential remaster could happen. But as one commenter pointed out, remasters can go wrong. Look no further than the disaster with Buffy the Vampire Slayer. A proper 4K remaster of SG-1 would need to be a labor of love, not just a quick cash grab. And us fans will know the difference. Now, in all honesty, I didn't watch much Stargate. I can't even tell you which one I watched. It was here and there, whenever it came on the Sci-Fi Channel, between watching Tremors, I'd watch Stargate. So I'm not sure, because obviously they weren't airing in chronological order by the time I started watching it. So it was just whatever would come on. But if they did decide to do a remaster and re-air it in chronological order, of course I would give Stargate a good watch. But if the remaster isn't up to par, we're gonna know right away, and you're gonna be able to look at it and be like, that doesn't look great, that looks bad, and who wants that? And if it's not going to be the labor of, and if it's not going to be the labor of love that everyone expects, then don't even waste your time. In the meantime, Stargate fans are left to rewatch their DVDs or streaming copies, hoping that one day we'll get to see more from this universe. And who knows? With nostalgia being a key factor in today's pop culture, a Stargate revival might be closer than we think.